Unicorn Overlord is an extremely solid title that feels like a natural successor to Final Fantasy Tactics. There are some games you see and you just know you're gonna get something special, right? Like when you went to the adoption place and saw that kitten or puppy that you knew that would become your best friend, or that time you saw your favorite Pokemon for the first time and you knew it would always be on your team. I'm not talking about RPG HD 2.8 Final Chapter Remix or Franchise Game Insert Color Here Edition. I'm talking about new IPs. That feeling you get when you see a trailer and think, that's exactly what I want. For me last year, that was Unicorn Overlord. There was something about it. The combat gameplay that was shown, the character portraits and models, the way the conversations played out. I just knew. So when it came out and I hadn't finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth yet, I was sad, and it took me another 2.5 weeks to get to it. Well worth it though. I still think Rebirth is a contender for Game of the Year 2024, but once I finally got to open up Unicorn Overlord and start my new adventure, I knew I'd made the right choice. Unicorn Overlord is a tactical RPG that feels like a love child between DioField Chronicles and Symphony of War. If you don't know what those games are, that's okay. One was a fantastic indie title that I highly recommend, and the other was a Square Enix game that was pretty fun and definitely worth the price on sale. But beyond that, as I mentioned at the top of the review, it feels like a natural successor to Final Fantasy Tactics, from the art style where most of the cast lacks a nose, to the way the combat itself feels. So let's start with a little nitpicking about genres. Also, I'm told it's like Ogre Battle, but I've never played one of those games, so I'll just have to use my own experiences. Real-time tactical RPGs are kind of niche on consoles. They exist, certainly, but they are fairly rare. I also think games like Diablo 4 and Unicorn Overlord need a category of their own. Unicorn Overlord probably fits better in the turn-based strategy RPG genre, even though it's not entirely turn-based. You know what? Let's get into the gameplay so I can explain better. You control a battalion of units that you construct yourself using a massive variety of options. You start the game with 3 armies, each with the ability to have 2 units in them. Very quickly, you open up the option to have 3, then 4 units per army, totaling 6 by the end of the game, as well as unlocking more formations as you see fit. The customization here is very, very deep. You get more and more units, 70 just from story recruits to fill out your ranks, plus virtually unlimited amounts of mercenaries you can pick from various barracks located around the map. The combinations feel endless. You can have mixed battalions that can handle multiple situations, or you can opt for hyper-specialized setups to snipe enemy formations. An example of the former would be having your hero, a paladin, and a berserker on the front line, while on the back line you have a spell-slinging mage, an archer, and a healer to keep everyone alive. While an example of the latter would be 6 Griffin Riders to rip through all opposing cavalry units. There's no wrong way to play, and it's wonderful. The customization doesn't even end there, as each character can have up to 4 items equipped, which varies based on class. Some classes can have a sword, a shield, and 2 accessories, while another one can have a weapon and 3 accessories, and then others still can have 2 weapons and 2 accessories. There's even one character that can use 2 shields and a weapon. Each of those individual items aren't just stat sticks either, oh no. They can be, sure, but they can also give you more actions during combat or give you entirely new skill options. The best example is a sword you can buy fairly early in the game that, while fairly weak, applies poison on hit. Since poison bypasses armor, your faster sword-wielding units can use that to help them cleave through armored units that they would otherwise deal 1 damage to. Another cool one was a rod for shamans that gave them the Sandstorm ability, which cost 3 action points, but blinded the entire enemy comp, making it impossible for them to land their first attack. But yes, action points. There are 2 kinds of action points, AP and PP, and you can have up to 4 of each on a given unit. Action points are used to perform actions in battle, while PP is used for reactions. A normal ability will generally use 1 AP, though that does increase for more powerful skills such as the aforementioned Sandstorm. Meanwhile, your first real experience with PP will be your Thief starting character, who has a passive skill that lets them automatically dodge an attack. These are all used based on the circumstances of your team and the enemy team's actions. The dodge attack, for instance, will automatically activate when attacked by an opponent and the evasion roll for your character was failed. It's basically a get-out-of-jail-free card and allows thieves to tank from the front line. This likely sounds incredibly unbalanced, except there are many units that have true strike abilities and buffs, allowing them to bypass evasion. This is the push and pull of the game, and where its combat really begins to shine. Armored units are generally susceptible to magic, but are also weak to things like hammers. Thieves have high evasion but low hit points, so if they do get hit, they just crumble like wet paper. Meanwhile, you think your mages are safe in the back row until an archer decides to bypass your front line, or cavalry just tramples through both of them. All of this is supplemented by a pre-battle explanation similar to Fire Emblem, but you can learn to read that pre-battle information and start to infer what actually happens. A baseline example is if you have your thief attack a unit and you do 16 damage while they show 0, it means your thief evaded the enemy's attack successfully. Meanwhile, if it shows your team takes 24 damage and your thief has 24 hit points, you can safely assume your thief will die if you leave things as they are. And that brings us to the game's RNG. All enemy information is presented prior to engaging the enemy, and it can be manipulated in a number of ways. You might have a team with a Griffin Rider in the front row, and another behind it, and the pre-battle screen shows your front Griffin Rider dies. You can go into your formation before initiating the battle and swap around the position of those two Griffin Riders, which might change the outcome to where you take 0 damage due to the game re-rolling calculations for that new setup. If you swap back to the original formation, however, the original outcome will remain. Another way to manipulate RNG is to use a stat boosting item, which causes the game to create a new set of circumstances that might flesh out exactly the same or may roll the game in your favor. These are, of course, extremely advanced techniques that are only required to use on the hardest difficulty setting. While I will get into the difficulty of the game later, just know that the game is generally considered easy. The biggest weakness with the general combat gameplay and the game as a whole is how slowly it trickles content to you. It seems like every 1 to 2 battles you're getting a new tutorial for a function you can perform or a new class you can recruit, but it takes over 20 hours for things to truly open up and shine. At the start of the game, most battles are just straight up brawls based on unit types and raw stats, but as you open up class promotions and more intricate items, you start to notice your character's not exactly doing what you want them to in combat. If you've ever played Final Fantasy XII, you're aware of the Gambit system, and this game has that. There are hundreds of tactical tags and ways to trigger it, and the deeper into the game you get, the more you can customize things to happen the way you want them to. Tired of your healer blowing through their PP to restore a single hit point? Set their heal spell to heal if the target's hit points is less than 50%. Sick of your units attacking different opponents, spreading out the damage and not actually killing anything before enemy healing kicks in? Set your units to prioritize enemies with the lowest hit point percentage. Did you finally realize that True Strike is wasted on Armor Knights? Set the unit to prioritize using it only when thieves or flyers are around. You can get really big brained with this Gambit system, and combined with the fact that by the end of the game you'll have 90 to 100 total units, some people may find themselves with a headache setting up their squadrons from pure decision fatigue. And it's awesome. I know I didn't mention objectives, but that's because the objective is almost always the same: defeat the enemy general and capture the key location. And that gets us to difficulty. Difficulty is subjective. I'm playing the game on the hardest difficulty, and while I have had a few fights that made me sweat, I still find the game rather easy. If I were to hand the game controller to my wife, I would have a game over in less than 5 minutes. The thing about a game like this is the only people who are generally playing it are people who love this genre. Call of Duty player 6969 is not looking at Unicorn Overlord with excitement. Your little brother isn't anticipating getting in this game for Christmas. This is a game for people who like these kinds of games. The thing about that is, to know you like these kinds of games, you have to have played these kind of games before. Much like how Demon's Souls veterans find Elden Ring to be super easy, most of the people who enjoy tactical RPGs will find Unicorn Overlord to be pretty forgiving even on its harder difficulties. But again, that's not because the game is super easy, it's just because we're all really good at them, and that's okay. Games are allowed to be fun without making you want to crush your own testicles between two 2x4s and then have 2 monster trucks crash into them from either side. Unicorn Overlord is pure fun. You go in for the combat, you stay for the combat. You spend an hour every few hours retuning your teams and compositions, making sure your favorite units are all up to snuff, then you go back in for another 20 or so battles. It's a wonderful gameplay loop for people who like that kind of gameplay loop, and by the gods, I am one of them. When you aren't in combat, you are running around a very alive world map. There isn't always wildlife, though there is the occasional chicken fetching quest. Sorry, Red 13.
They could have lived long and happy lives running free. If I hadn't. Well, we all gotta eat?
There are so many NPCs in towns. This is by far one of the most realistic full worlds I've ever seen. In most RPGs, there are 10 to 15 cities in the entire world. In Unicorn Overlord, there are hundreds just on the one continent you are traversing. Each town has its own shops with their own stocks, and you're always worth checking out. In addition, you can eat at taverns to increase your affinity between different characters, which in turn increases their stats when paired together in combat, or you can complete their reconstruction side quests, which allow you to garrison a unit there to defend the town. While the towns won't actually get attacked, A garrison unit will automatically gather resources nearby as they respawn, so you'll want every town you reconstruct to have a unit defending it, because you will need those resources to repair other towns, as well as complete other objectives and side objectives as you move forward. In addition to resource gathering, there are actually tons of other non-combat related things to do on the map. Every zone has stone carvings that, once you find the proper journal entry for, you can activate in the correct order for some sweet loot. There's also mining minigames similar to Chocobo Hot Coal from Final Fantasy IX where you dig up loot, which you inevitably net you treasure maps. Then you use those treasure maps to track down a vague location in the area to get, you guessed it, fat loot. That's what Unicorn Overlord is. It's a loot fest, but very rarely is the loot trash. You always need more premium accessories and filler accessories for your dozens and dozens of units. You always need gold. You're always just short of the resources you need to finish repairing that last town you liberated. And again, if you like that sort of thing, it's awesome! The way a new sword with a new ability can completely change the effectiveness of a composition is incredible, and seeing it all come together in combat is one of the most rewarding things you can experience in a game like this. The game is, by all rights and reasons, open world. Some locations are guarded and blocked off, but it's rarely by someone telling you, you can't go this way. The game will let you, if you can beat the level 35 battle to pass through. Hell, you can even go to the final battle almost immediately after starting the game, but good luck fighting the 6 teams of level 40 upgraded units with your 4 teams of 3 level 10 units. But hey, it's an option. And at the end of the day, that's what the game is. It's freedom, it's options, it's math and strategy, and again, if you love that kind of thing, it is divine. Story-wise, the game takes a fairly hands-off approach. It very much reminds me of an old-school platformer. The objective is, go kill that asshole, and that's it. From there, you do learn a lot of lore and facts about each region and town you come across, but it's all flavor. The objective never changes. Go kill the asshole. The real meat on the game's story comes from individual characters. Whether you have a personality type you enjoy or you're just an aesthetic person, you will have a favorite unit that you'll want to deploy in every battle. Even the generic mercenaries you can purchase can grow on you. I have a healer that I made early in the game that I named Izzy, after my cat, and I gave her one of the pessimistic personality voices. When she levels up, she sometimes chortles and says,
maybe it's not all bad.
Like a nerd, and I love it so much. I use her in nearly every battle. Oh, and just as a quick aside, the point of hiring mercenaries is to make sure you have enough units for defending towns, as well as you can actually customize their stats to some extent. It's something you will want to do. Overall though, don't hold your breath for the story to break ground and make you think. Just let yourself fall in love with the characters and try to ignore the fact that the game could pretty much be played on a tabletop and still work. My biggest complaint about the game is there's a lack of feedback when saving. There's no boop or click or confirmation. You save your game, then it asks you if you want to save your game. And then you save your game 3 more times because you have the memory of a sponge. No? Just me? Alright, anyways. As far as audio and graphics go, the graphical style has that vanillaware flair, but still makes you feel nostalgic for Final Fantasy Tactics, while the music is good enough. The battles are gorgeous if you watch them play out. And eventually, you may find yourself wanting to listen to a YouTube video or something on longer engagements, but the music itself is by no means offensive. The voice acting ranges from pretty okay to phenomenal. Again, I love Izzy. Characters range from short kings like Gilbert to the 8-foot-tall muscle mommy Amalia, who could probably scrap with Lady Dimitrescu in a hand-to-hand battle, which I'm sure Markiplier would love to see. At the end of the day, Unicorn Overlord is probably exactly what you're looking for if you are looking for a game like Unicorn Overlord. It has tons of battles and characters, lots of numbers to crunch, and plenty of exploring to do. Comparing it to other recent entries in the real-time strategy RPG genre like Diofield Chronicles makes it an easy 8 out of 10. It's really, really good, if not really, really niche. I know you'll enjoy it, just be sure to put it on expert mode if you want to have to use the game's systems. And that's it! What's your favorite strategy RPG, and what do you yourself think of Unicorn Overlord? Leave a comment down below, be sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you in the next one. Deuces, dummies.